Lieutenant Commander Maya Chen clutched her side as crimson seeped between her fingers. The Galactic Academy's combat simulation arena, usually a controlled environment for interspecies training exercises, had transformed into a nightmare when the Krell separatists hijacked the systems. What began as a diplomatic summit with educational demonstrations had become a hostage situation with over 300 alien dignitaries and students trapped inside. Maya wasn't supposed to be fighting today. As Earth's foremost xenobiologist and the Academy's first human instructor, she had been slated to give a lecture on comparative physiology. The irony wasn't lost on her as she ducked behind a shattered console, her lab coat now serving as a makeshift pressure bandage. "Professor Chen, you must retreat to the evacuation point," whispered Taz Yulo, a spindly Voshin graduate student whose 3 eyes blinked asynchronously in fear. "Your hemoglobin levels are decreasing rapidly. Continued exertion will result in system failure." Maya managed a tight smile. "That's not how humans work, Taz. We're built to keep going." Around her huddled 7 alien students from different species, her impromptu resistance cell amid chaos. The Academy had been designed as a showcase of galactic cooperation, a place where the most promising minds from across the hegemony could learn together. Humans, being the newest and least technologically advanced species admitted to the interstellar community, were still viewed with a mixture of curiosity and dismissal. "The security protocols have locked down the main arena," chittered Zal, a Mantidian tactical student whose exoskeleton gleamed under the emergency lighting. "The Krell have control of the environmental systems and weapons platforms. They're threatening to decompress sections unless their leadership is released from hegemony custody." Maya assessed their situation through the haze of pain. The 8 of them had escaped the initial assault because they'd been in her private lab when the attack began. The other 300 attendees weren't so fortunate, now hostages in the central amphitheater. "The Krell miscalculated," Maya said, checking the charge on the standard-issue pulse pistol she'd taken from a fallen security officer. "They expected the typical hegemony response: careful negotiation, minimal risk to life." "Is that not the correct approach?" asked Kay Voth, a methane-breathing Durelian whose environmental suit hummed softly. Maya's eyes hardened. "Not when you're dealing with humans." Admiral Sorkin of the Hegemony Security Council stared at the holographic display with his 4 arms crossed in frustration. The standoff had reached its 6th hour, and the Krell extremists showed no signs of compromise. "The humans are demanding permission to mount a rescue operation," said his adjutant, her tentacles rippling with concern. Sorkin made a dismissive gesture. "The human contingent consists of 3 diplomatic officers and an academic. What exactly do they propose to do?" "They're claiming that Professor Chen is still inside and operational. They have a plan." "Professor Chen? The xenobiologist?" Sorkin's scale shifted to a doubtful blue. "Even if she survived the initial assault, what could one injured human possibly contribute? Their species barely survived their own industrial pollution. They're physically unremarkable, technologically primitive, and their society has only recently unified." "Sir," the adjutant said carefully, "they're quite insistent. Their ambassador says, and I quote, 'You haven't seen what humans can do when backed into a corner.'" Sorkin's membranes fluttered in what passed for a sigh among his species. "Fine. Let them present their plan. At least it will keep them occupied while real solutions are developed." Inside the academy, Maya had transformed her small band of terrified students into something resembling a tactical unit. Despite the throbbing pain in her side, a Krell energy weapon had grazed her during their initial escape. She'd managed to lead them through the maintenance tunnels to a secondary environmental control room. "Professor, your vital signs continue to deteriorate," Taz Yulo insisted as Maya pried open an access panel. "Most species would be unconscious with such blood loss." "That's because most species evolved with redundant systems or specialized adaptations," Maya explained through gritted teeth. "Humans took a different path. We're generalists with remarkable endurance and pain tolerance." She didn't mention that she was fighting to stay conscious, that each movement sent fire through her nervous system. These students had never seen humans in crisis before, had only studied Earth as a curiosity, a Class II world whose inhabitants had somehow stumbled into faster-than-light travel through sheer determination rather than methodical advancement. In the Hegemony Xenobiological Index, humans are classified as persistence predators, offered Alara, a crystalline Lumidian whose body refracted light in anxious patterns. But the text suggested this was primarily of historical interest, not practically relevant in the modern era. Maya laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at her wound. History isn't as distant for humans as it is for longer-lived species. The traits that let our ancestors run down prey until it collapsed from exhaustion are still with us. We're not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most intelligent, but we simply do not stop. She interfaced her datapad with the environmental controls. Now, let's see if we can give the Krell a practical demonstration of human persistence. In the command center established outside the academy, Ambassador Sarah Okafor watched as the hegemony officials dismissed Captain Reeves' tactical assessment. "With all due respect," said Magister Havelk, the Durelian representative, human military doctrine is notoriously aggressive and unsophisticated. The Krell have disabled the Academy's neural interfaces. Without technological superiority, what do you propose? That your soldiers simply run at them?" Captain Reeves, a veteran of the Mars colonial conflict, smiled thinly. "Sometimes the old ways work best." Ambassador Okafor stepped forward. "What my colleague is attempting to explain is that humans have a unique advantage in this situation. While your species evolved remarkable specializations, the Durelian methane processing system, the Voshan multispectral vision, the Mantidian regenerative exoskeleton, humans developed extreme adaptability and psychological resilience." "And this helps how?" asked Admiral Sorkin. "Because," Okafor said, pointing to a new signal that had appeared on their communications array, "Professor Chen is still in there, injured and outnumbered, but fighting. And a wounded human is perhaps the most dangerous thing in your precious hegemony." Maya's students watched in fascination and horror as she cauterized her own wound using tools from her emergency kit. She hadn't made a sound during the procedure, though sweat beaded her forehead and her jaw was clenched tight enough to crack stone. "Among my people, such an injury would require immediate medical stasis," said Shao, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Luxury," Maya said with a pained smile as she pulled her tattered uniform back into place. "Humans evolved on a world where predators and prey alike would retreat to lick their wounds. We developed differently. Our bodies flood with chemicals that let us ignore pain and keep functioning when injured." She stood, testing her balance. "It's not ideal, and I'll pay for it later, but right now it's keeping me alive and mobile." "What is the human term for this phenomenon?" asked Kay Voth with scientific curiosity. "Adrenaline, endorphins, stubbornness, take your pick," Maya replied. "Now, let's review the plan." She pulled up a schematic of the Academy's central amphitheater where the hostages were being held. The Krell had positioned guards at all major entrances and disabled the emergency protocols. "The Krell expect a negotiated solution because that's how the hegemony has always operated," Maya explained. "They don't understand humans yet. We're going to use that." Taz Ulo's appendages trembled. "Professor, there are 27 armed Krell militants. Even with optimal conditions, the probability of success." "Never tell me the odds," Maya interrupted with a grim smile. "That's another human trait. We perform better when we don't know how impossible something is." The first sign that something had changed came when sections of the Academy began experiencing power fluctuations. The Krell commander, a scarred veteran named Drez Carr, ordered his subordinates to investigate. "It's nothing to concern yourself with," he told the assembled hostages, many of whom represented the hegemony's highest echelons of academia and politics. "It's a failing system, perhaps. This facility was not built to withstand determined opposition." Archmagister Loon, the Academy's venerable chancellor, regarded the Krell with the calm demeanor his species was known for. "You underestimate the Academy, Commander. And you underestimate our newest faculty member." Dreskar's facial ridges contorted in what passed for amusement among the Krell. The human? We monitored her life signs earlier. She's either dead or incapacitated by now. Humans are fragile creatures, barely suited for interstellar society. As if on cue, the environmental alarms began to sound. Atmospheric pressure indicators flashed warnings as oxygen levels began to drop in the corridors surrounding the amphitheater. Drekar barked orders into his communication device, but received only static in response. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his features. Artificial gravity fluctuations in sectors 7 through 12, reported K-Voth as Maya's students monitored the systems they'd managed to access. The Krell in those sections are experiencing disorientation. Maya nodded, her face pale but determined. Good, Taz. Status on the distress beacon? Operational, Professor. I've modulated it to the frequency Captain Reeves provided. The human military vessels in orbit should be receiving our tactical data. She checked the time. 20 minutes since they'd initiated their plan. The Krell would have adapted to the environmental changes by now, but that was never meant to be the main assault, just a distraction. Sal, are you in position? The Mantidian student's voice came through Maya's communicator, tense but controlled. Yes, Professor. The maintenance shaft provides access as you predicted. I can see 6 Krell guards at the eastern entrance. Ilara? The Lumidian's crystalline voice resonated with nervous energy. Western entrance secured. Light refraction camouflage holding. Maya took a deep breath, ignoring the protest from her injured side. Remember, this isn't about confronting them directly. We just need to create enough chaos for the rescue teams to breach the perimeter. She activated the final sequence on her datapad. Throughout the academy, hidden speakers began broadcasting at frequencies specifically calibrated to disorient Krell auditory systems. And now, Maya said, we show them why humans are classified as dangerous. Outside the academy, Ambassador Okafor watched as Captain Reeves coordinated with the small human contingent and their reluctant hegemony allies. We're receiving telemetry from inside, a communications officer reported. Professor Chen has mapped Krell positions and compromised their environmental controls. Admiral Sorkin stared at the incoming data with all 4 eyes widened in disbelief. How is this possible? The Academy's systems should be locked down. You designed your security protocols to resist sophisticated hacking, Captain Reeves explained with a hint of pride. But you never accounted for someone physically rewiring junction boxes while bleeding out. Ambassador Okafor studied the tactical display. Professor Chen has created an opening. We need to move now. Admiral Sorkin hesitated. The hegemony protocols for hostage situations require. With respect, Admiral, Okafor interrupted. This is no longer a hegemony operation. This is a human professor teaching everyone a lesson about our species. Are you prepared to learn, or shall we proceed without you? Drekar was losing control of the situation, though he refused to admit it. Half his forces were reporting mysterious malfunctions in their equipment. Security screens showed impossible readings, phantom heat signatures, movement where there should be none. It's a deception, he insisted. The hegemony is attempting to confuse our sensors. One of his lieutenants approached, mandibles twitching nervously. Commander, 3 of our perimeter teams have gone silent. Before Drekar could respond, the amphitheater's main display activated, showing a transmission originating from within the academy. The face that appeared belonged to Maya Chen, pallid but resolute. Attention Krell forces, she said, her voice steady despite the visible pain in her eyes. This is Lieutenant Commander Maya Chen, Earth Defense Force, currently serving as Professor of Xenobiology at the Galactic Academy. You have exactly 5 minutes to surrender and release your hostages. Drekar chittered in what his species considered laughter. Or what, human? You'll bleed on us? We scanned you earlier, you're severely injured and commanding a handful of students. You have no leverage. Maya's expression didn't change. That's where you're wrong, Commander. You're applying Krell logic to a human opponent. By your standards, I should be incapacitated or dead. By human standards, I'm just getting started. The screen split to show multiple views of the Academy's exterior, where both hegemony and human ships were positioning for assault. But here's what you really need to understand about humans, Maya continued. We're not just stubborn individuals. We're a collective force of stubborn individuals. You thought you were dealing with one wounded human? You're now facing an entire species that takes it personally when one of their own is threatened. Drezkar's composure finally cracked. This is a bluff. The hegemony would never authorize a direct assault with hostages at risk. The hegemony wouldn't, Maya agreed. Humans, though, we calculate acceptable risks differently. Your 5-minute start now. What followed would later be recorded in hegemony archives as the Chen Doctrine, a new understanding of human military capabilities that forever changed how the interstellar community viewed Earth's place in the galactic order. The coordinated assault came from multiple vectors simultaneously. While hegemony forces created a diversion at the main entrances, Maya and her students disabled the internal security system section by section. Captain Reeves' team, using atmospheric suits to navigate the compromised environmental zones, breached the secondary access points. Inside the amphitheater, the Krell realized too late that they had fundamentally misunderstood their situation. When the doors finally burst open, the first figure through was Maya Chen herself, moving with the unnatural determination of a human pushing past their body's limits. Later, the student witnesses would give varying accounts of what they saw. The Lumidians described her as burning with internal light. The Mantidians reported that she moved like a predator species, despite catastrophic injury. The Vosians, with their temporal perception, claimed she exhibited unprecedented neural activity correlating with intense focus rather than pain response. What they all agreed upon was the effect her appearance had on the Krell commander. Drezkar, seeing a critically injured human still functioning, still fighting, experienced what his species rarely encountered, existential doubt. The actual combat lasted less than 3 minutes. The combined human and hegemony forces, guided by Maya's team's intelligence, systematically neutralized the Krell resistance. When Drezkar made his final stand, it was Maya who approached him, pulse pistol steady despite her deteriorating condition. "Surrender," she said simply. "What are you?" Drezkar demanded, mandibles clicking in agitation. Maya's smile was grim. "I'm a human who made a promise to protect my students. There's nothing in this galaxy more dangerous than that." One standard month later, Maya Chen stood before the Hegemony Security Council, still bearing the scars of her ordeal but fully recovered thanks to advanced medical treatment. The chamber was unusually crowded, with representatives from species that normally showed little interest in Academy affairs. "Professor Chen," began Admiral Sorkin with newfound respect in his voice, "the Council has reviewed the events at the Galactic Academy. Your actions, while unorthodox by hegemony standards, undoubtedly saved many lives." Maya inclined her head slightly. "Thank you, Admiral, but I didn't act alone. My students demonstrated remarkable courage and adaptability." "Yes, about that," continued the Admiral. "Applications to study under human instructors have increased 7,000% since the incident. It seems you've made quite an impression on our younger generations." Ambassador Okafor, standing beside Maya, smiled diplomatically. "The Academy was founded on the principle of mutual learning. It appears humans have something valuable to contribute after all." Archmagister Loon, who had personally witnessed Maya's final confrontation with Drezkar, raised his ancient appendage for attention. When he spoke, his translator conveyed gravitas that silenced the chamber. For centuries, the hegemony has classified species according to their evolutionary specializations. The Krell with their hive cognition, the Durellians with their environmental adaptability, the Mantidians with their structural integration. Humans were categorized as unremarkable generalists, jack of all trades, master of none. The Archmagister's compound eyes fixed on Maya. "We fail to recognize that being a generalist is, itself, a profound specialization. The capacity to continue functioning despite systemic damage, to improvise without optimal tools, and to persist beyond reasonable limits. These are not weaknesses but extraordinary strengths. He gestured to a holographic display showing the revised hegemony xenobiological index. Under the human entry, the classification had been amended from Class 2 emerging intelligence to Class 1 persistence predator approach with caution. Professor Chen, concluded the Archmagister, the hegemony formally requests that you develop a comprehensive curriculum on human adaptability and crisis response for all senior academy students. Maya exchanged glances with Ambassador Okafor, who nodded slightly. I would be honored, Maya replied, though I should warn you human teaching methods can be rather hands-on. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the chamber. The message was clear. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for the last time. The species that had been dismissed as fragile had demonstrated a resilience that even the oldest civilizations now sought to understand. As Maya looked out at the assembled representatives, she thought of the old Earth, saying that had sustained her during the darkest moments of the crisis. It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. The galaxy was about to learn that humans, above all else, kept moving forward. In a quiet moment after the council session, Taz Yulo approached his professor with the directness that characterized their species. Professor Chen, there is something I still do not understand. When we were trapped in the academy, your injuries were severe enough to kill most species. Our medical scans confirmed you experienced extreme pain throughout the ordeal. Yet you never stopped. How is this possible? Maya considered the question carefully. How to explain something so fundamentally human to a being whose evolutionary path had been so different? Taz, when humans face impossible situations, something interesting happens in our minds. Pain becomes secondary. Fear becomes fuel. Our focus narrows to a singular purpose. She gestured to the stars visible through the council chamber's vast observation dome. Your people reached the stars through methodical advancement over millennia. Humans got here because we refused to accept limitations. When someone tells us something is impossible, we take it as a challenge. Taz Yulo's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep contemplation. Then the most dangerous thing in the universe is a human who has something to protect, Maya finished with a smile. Remember that lesson, Taz. It might save your life someday. As her former student departed, Maya turned back to the star field. Somewhere out there, Earth continued its rotation, home to billions of humans who had evolved on a world that tried to kill them daily through predators, climate, disease, and their own short-sightedness. Yet they had survived, adapted, and now reached beyond their cradle. The hegemony had finally learned what humans had always known: underestimate us at your peril. We may not be the strongest, the fastest, or even the smartest species in the galaxy, but we never, ever stop.